Okay, guys. So today we will continue working on the speaking section, but we'll actually be starting a new question. Remember that we said in the speaking section we have how many questions? Does anybody remember?
We have integrated and independent.
Exactly. So how many in total? We've got 4 questions in total, right? As you said, Pansy, we have independent and integrated questions, but we only have 1 independent question and we get 3 integrated ones. So that makes a total of 4 questions. Okay. So last week we were working on question number 1, the independent one, the one where you have to just give your opinion on something. And today we'll start working on the next one, task 2, right, or question 2. Remember that it's already an integrated question, which means that you will have to be summarizing something. So let's see what we have. Do you guys have any questions before we start? By any chance? Okay. So let's see. First of all, we're gonna call this question the university question. Okay, that's what we're gonna call it. So, and why are we gonna call it like this? Because this question will be about university. All right, so that's what we're naming it like that. Now, let's see what you have to do for this question. So for this question, this is basically what you will have to do. The first thing that you'll do is read a letter or read an announcement. You will basically have to read a text that will appear on your screens, and you will get 45 seconds to do so. So you will get 45 seconds to read this text. Then, after you read a text, you will have to listen to a conversation. So you will hear an audio file, you will hear a conversation between 2 students. And finally, you will get the question, and you will get 30 seconds to prepare and 1 minute to answer the question. Okay? So 45 seconds to read a text, then you hear a conversation, and finally you get 30 seconds to prepare your response and 1 minute to speak. Okay, guys? So that's basically it. Do you guys have any questions in terms of the format? Okay. So let's see a sample response. I'm sorry, a sample question. And that's how we're gonna learn. Okay, so we have okay, so this is how the question will be when you're taking the test.
Number 2. In this question, you will read a short passage about a campus situation and then listen to a talk on the same topic. You will then answer a question using information from both the reading passage and the talk. After the question, you will have 30 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak. The university is making a change in the courses it will offer. Read the article from the university newspaper about the change. You will have 45 seconds to read the article. Begin reading now.
Okay, so that's the first part. As you can see, first you get the instructions, and the instructions basically tell you what I was telling you, right? You will first read a text, then you listen to an audio file, and then you have to summarize it. Now, this is the reading that you have. So we're gonna be working on this reading, but we'll do it here on my presentation, and then we'll continue with the video. Okay, so see. Okay, guys. This is the reading text. Remember that you would have 45 seconds to read. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna give you guys 1 minute and for you to read this text, okay? And then we'll discuss. So please read the text. Okay, guys, are you done reading?
Yes, Andrea.
All right, perfect. So, as you can see in this text, this is something written by the university itself, right? We're talking about X university. It doesn't matter which university, it's just an imaginary university. And this is a letter written by the university, right? It won't always be like this. Sometimes you will have a letter written by a student from the university. But it doesn't really matter whether this letter was written by the university or by a student. What you guys have to do is when you're reading this, you are able to take notes, by the way, but you should be looking out for 3 core elements. What are those 3 elements that you need to make sure that you have? The first one is the change. Now, what do I mean by the change? You're always gonna read about a proposal for a change, an announcement of a change, or a plan, right? It's always something that is gonna be different in university. It's always a proposal for a change, an announcement of a change, but there's always going to be that change here. Okay, something's happening or something will happen or something has happened in the university. And it could be anything really, it could be something really small, like maybe they are like changing the menu of the cafeteria, or maybe they are renovating a certain space, I don't know, or maybe they are adding a new class or dropping a class. I don't know. But there's always a change. So in this case, can you guys tell me what the change is? What is the change here?
The elimination of the sculpture program.
Exactly. The elimination of the sculpture program. That is the change. Perfect. So I'm going to highlight that part. I want to say, um, that you have an idea of what the change will be just by reading the title, right? In the title, we have sculpture courses to be discontinued. So that is the change, right? They are discontinuing the sculpture courses. But you won't always have the change in the title, okay? You always have a title, that's true, and it can help you. But I recommend that you read. Don't just copy what you have from the title because sometimes it's hard to relate it to what you have in the text. So in this case, let's always extract the change from the text, not from the title. So in this case, they say university administrators announced yesterday that the sculpture program, a division of the art department, will be eliminated. This is the change, right? The sculpture program will be eliminated. That's it. Now, that is the first thing that you guys have to identify. The first thing that you need to make sure that you have, the change. Now, what are the other elements? Aside from the change, in this text, in this letter, they are giving you, they are explaining why they want to do this, right? Or why they are going to be eliminating the sculpture courses. So how many reasons do we have? How many reasons do the university or does the university give us for eliminating the sculpture program?
Because the professor is retired.
Okay, that's one reason. Is there any other?
Um, the number of our students.
Okay, what about the number of students?
It's a lack of art students.
Exactly. There's a lack of students that are taking these sculpture courses. So for the university, it just doesn't make sense to continue with the courses if there are not a lot of students interested in the course, right? So lack of students or lack of students' interest, right? Trying to, all right. So those are the two reasons, right? We only have two reasons. You will always have two reasons. You have the change, in this case, that the sculpture program will be eliminated, and you have two reasons why that will happen. And those are the two things that you guys need to make sure that you extract from the text, okay? You need to make sure that you understand the change, that you know what's going on, what will happen, or what is happening in the university, and that you also know the reasons for that change, all right? You always have two reasons. And while you're reading, you have to take a few notes. Now, my suggestion is please only take notes about the change. Don't write anything down about the reasons, okay? The reasons are just for your understanding, for context, but they're not as important as the change. So if you guys are gonna take notes, then you can write down a sculpture program eliminated, right? That's the change. So is this okay? Remember, you have 45 seconds to do this. So obviously we've had a lot of time now, but when you're reading, you will have to read very quickly and understand the change, the two reasons, and take a few notes about the change. Is that okay? Do you guys have any questions about this so far? Okay. So write it down in your notes, right? A sculpture program eliminated. Now, remember that after you read, let's go back to our video. So you have 45 seconds to read, right? Let's jump this video a little bit.
Now listen to two students discussing the article.
Okay, so after you read, you will have to hear two students discussing that article, discussing that letter, talking about that letter. So, what are you guys gonna hear? You're always gonna hear a female and a male student, okay? It's never gonna be two male students or two female students. It's always gonna be a female and a male student. And they are gonna be talking about that letter that you just read. Now, here's the important thing. Out of these two students, only one of them, I don't know which one, it could be her, it could be him, but only one of these two will be the main student. And the other one doesn't matter. The other one is just a passive listener, right? Somebody that's listening to the main student. But one of these students, either the female or the male, will have a strong position, a strong opinion about that article, about that change that we read about. So this student could either be supporting the change and being like, that is a great idea that they are eliminating the sculpture program. I totally support this idea. So the student could be in favor, or the student could also be against the change and be like, that's a terrible idea. I don't agree with the university. They shouldn't do this. So you have one of the two options. The student could be in favor or the student could be against, but remember that it's only one student that has the opinion. And the other one is just there listening to what the main one is saying. So what do you have to do? When you guys are listening, your job and your goal is to first think, identify which student, has the opinion. So identify the main student, right? The student that has the opinion. Now, second, identify the student's opinion, the main student's opinion, right? So after knowing which student is the one that has the opinion, you need to also try to hear what the student's opinion is. So is the student in favor or against the change? You have to answer that question. And the third and final thing that you guys have to do when listening is, understand the two reasons given by the student, or by the main student, right? Now, the thing is, this student that is in favor or against the change will talk about or will provide other two reasons why he or she is against or in favor of this change. So aside from the reasons that we already read in the article, one of these students will give you other two reasons, either in favor or against that change. And your job is to try to see what those are and obviously to take notes, all right? You have to take notes about all of these. So, is this okay, you guys? Do you have any questions before listening to the conversation? Is everything clear? Okay, guys, so I'm gonna play the conversation. Please, I want you guys to take notes. So remember, you need to first identify which is the main student. Is it the male or is it the female? Is it the guy or the girl? Second, what does this student think? Is this student against or in favor of the change? And third, what are the two reasons that this student gives, okay, for holding his or her opinion? So I'm gonna play the conversation. Please take notes. Let's hear it.
Discussing the article.
Everything all right?
Yeah, I'm just upset about that article I showed you this morning.
Why? What's the big deal?
Well, as an art major, I think it's a big loss for the department. The university's got it all wrong.
What do you mean?
Well, the low enrollment isn't because art majors don't want to take these classes. Problem is, who has time to take them when there are so many other requirements?
I don't understand.
See, the classes they're eliminating are all optional. The required courses are mostly painting and drawing, and they take up all our time. What we really need are different requirements. Then art majors could take a better variety of classes, all the things we're interested in.
That makes sense. But The thing about the professor,
Well, that's true. But still, they're being drastic. If money's the problem, they could hire a part-time professor. Or most of the professors in the department have secondary fields.
really?
Yeah, at least a few painting teachers are also great sculptors. I'm sure one of them could teach a class.
Okay. So that was the conversation, right? They were talking about the article, talking about the change that the university is planning on doing. So we're gonna see how we can take notes. So this is the way that I recommend that you guys take your notes. Try to always do it in a horizontal position so that every idea is related and your notes are very organized, because otherwise it may be hard to draw the connections. Okay, so what I suggest you guys do is first, obviously, you have to take notes from the reading about the change, right? In this case, the change was a sculpture program or sculpture classes being eliminated. Right? That's the change. And if you want, if you have time to do so, you are also, I mean, you can also take notes from the 2 reasons from the reading if you want. So in this case, we said that the first reason was the lack of students, right? Lack of students' interest. Lack of students' interest. And the second reason was that the professor is retiring, right? So we're gonna write that down. Okay, guys, that's what we had from the reading, right? So I want you guys now to tell me what you have from the listening. So first thing, the first question that I asked you guys to answer. Was the female or the male student the one that had the opinion? Who was the main student in the conversation? Was it the girl or the guy?
The girl.
Exactly. So as soon as you guys hear that it's the girl that has the opinion, what I want you guys to do is on your notes, on your paper, write down in big, huge letters, the pronoun. Write down the pronoun she in this case, because we're talking about the female student, right? So as big as you can, something that you can see from a distance, okay? Something like that. And second thing, was she against or in favor of the idea of eliminating the sculpture program?
Against.
Exactly. She didn't like the idea, right? She was against. So second thing that I want you guys to do is write down the opinion. So you only have to write down the words against or in favor, right? In this case, we're gonna write down the words or the word against. Okay, guys. Now, what about the reasons that she gives? What is the first reason that she gives? Why is she against this idea?
That it could be different requirements about the courses.
Right? One tip I'm gonna give you guys, usually most of the time, the students are always responding or answering the reasons that were given in the text. That's why I told you to make sure that you know what those reasons are, even if you don't take notes, but you have to keep them in mind, right? You have to have in mind that the university said that there's a lack of interest from students and that the only professor is retiring, right? Those are the 2 reasons that the university gave. So this student in the conversation is always going to be somehow responding to those arguments. No matter if the student is in favor or against, you will always have a direct response to those arguments. So what does the student think about the fact that the university says that students are not interested in taking these classes? Is that true? Are students really not interested? No, right? What she says is that it's not that students are not interested. It's not that students don't want to take these sculpture classes, but instead that they are too busy with all of the art requirements, right? So they have a lot of required classes that take up all of their time. We're gonna say the required classes required courses take up all students' time. So yes, it's true that they need different requirements so that they can take more courses, right? They can take the courses that they actually want to take because they are too busy. They don't have enough time to take these optional courses, right? Selective courses. That's what the student says. So the student is directly answering what the university said, right? The university says, we are eliminating these because students are not interested. And the student is like, no, we are interested. It's just that we don't have time to take those courses because we have a lot of requirements to meet. So what you guys should do is you should change the requirements, right, for art students. So the student is directly responding to every argument that the university gave. Same thing for the second one. So what does the student think about the fact that the professor is retiring?
She suggests that the professor take 2 classes.
Exactly. A professor can teach 2 classes, right? Some professors that have secondary fields. Exactly. Any other suggestions she makes or any other thing she says? I think she also says that maybe the university could hire a part-time teacher, right? Professor. Exactly. So she's kind of solving this problem of the fact that the professor is retiring, right? She's giving solutions. So that's it. That's what we have here. As you can see, it's always a direct response to the text, okay? And you should obviously have more notes from the listening because you're gonna have to explain the listening mostly. Okay, guys? So do you have any questions about what we did? Anything at all about the reading or the listening part? No questions, everything's clear? All right, that's perfect. Now let's continue watching the video. Let's see what else you will have when you're taking the test.
The woman expresses her opinion of the university's plan. State her opinion and explain the reasons she gives for holding that opinion.
Begin to prepare your response after the beep.
Okay, so as you can see, after listening to the conversation, you have the question. Now the question says, the woman expresses her opinion of the university's plan, state her opinion and explain the reasons she gives for holding that opinion. Now the question will always be exactly like this, okay? Of course, they're gonna change a few things. So maybe if it's the guy student, they will say the man, right? The man expresses his opinion of the university's plan, state his opinion. Maybe if it's a proposal, it will be like the woman expresses her opinion of the proposal from the letter, right? Maybe you will have a few changes. Maybe sometimes you have only the student and you don't know if it's woman or man. So the student expresses their opinion. Could be an option as well. So if you think about it, what is the question asking you to do? The question that the instructions are clear, right? The instructions are state the student's opinion, state the woman's opinion about the university's plan, and explain her reasons, right? The 2 reasons. Those are the instructions. They are not actually telling you to summarize everything that you read and you heard, right? They just want you to talk about the woman's opinion and explain her reasons, right? And that's what we're gonna do. Remember that after hearing the question, you have 30 seconds to prepare. So as you probably saw a few seconds ago, they will tell you, begin preparing your response after the beep. You have a beep and you get 30 seconds to prepare. Now, this is the same as I've been telling you guys for the speaking section overall. Remember that there are different things that you can do during this preparation time, right? And it is different for everyone. So I won't tell you exactly what to do. It depends. We're gonna see during our speaking sessions. So it totally depends on the student, right? If you guys are struggling with time, maybe you run out of time because you have too many things to say, then that may be a problem for your notes. So what you can do during these 30 seconds is classify your notes, right? Discard any irrelevant information, and maybe you can highlight or circle the most important points that you need to mention, right? Maybe you can organize your notes a little bit. Maybe you can prepare your response by speaking already, thinking about the sentences, the words put together. There are many things you guys can do, and it depends on your needs, you know? So we won't talk about the preparation time. What we will talk about is the response time. And this is something that everybody has to do in the same way, right? So what do you guys have to do when you have to speak? What do you do when you speak? Let's see. But before we see that, any questions? Okay. All right. So here's what you guys have to do. We will have a template. You may maybe take a screenshot of this template or just copy it if you want, but you guys need to use a template at least in the beginning. All right, that's really important. And here's what we're gonna do. Remember that we have how many seconds to speak? How many seconds do you guys get to speak in this question?
1 minute, I think.
Exactly, 1 minute, 60 seconds. So here's how we're gonna organize our time, first of all. We will have a short introduction, a one-sentence introduction that will last exactly 10 seconds. Please, it cannot be more than 10 seconds. You guys need to practice so that you make it at most in 10 seconds. Okay? And that leaves you 50 seconds for the body of your response. How are you going to divide this body of your response? You're going to separate it into the two reasons that the student gives. So for the first part of the body, you will spend 25 seconds there. And the second part is going to be 25 seconds long as well. Okay? That's how you guys should ideally organize your time. 10 seconds in the introduction, 25 in the first reason, and 25 in the second. Now, what do you say in each part? In your introduction, what you guys need to do is basically tell me two things. The first thing that you're going to do, and this is exactly what the question asked you to do, you will tell me the student's opinion. Okay, that's the first thing that you guys are going to do. You're going to state the student's opinion. How do you do that? You guys can say something like this. You can say the student in the conversation supports or is against the idea of. So this is according to whether the student is against or in favor, right? Remember, in this case, the student is against. So you would say the student in the conversation is against the idea of, right? So that's the student's opinion. And finally, the second thing that you guys are going to do in this introduction is mention the change. Now, this is really important, even if the question doesn't exactly ask you to mention the change, it is important that you guys mention it, because otherwise it's like you're not giving context. And it is important to give some context so that the listener gets the ideas pretty well. Okay, so we're going to say the student in the conversation is against the idea of, and here we have to mention the change. Now, in this case, you have in your notes, the change is that the sculpture program is being eliminated, right? So hear me out. Here's what I want you guys to do always. I want you to identify the main verb from the change. In this case, sculpture courses eliminated. The main verb there is eliminate, right? Sculpture courses those are nouns. So the main verb is eliminate. because the university is eliminating the sculpture program. So our main verb is going to be eliminate. And in that case, we're going to start with the verb. We're going to say, it's against the idea of eliminating, but your verb has always needs to be with in ing, in the ing form. All right, so in the form of a gerund. So the student in the conversation is against the idea of eliminating, in this case, with ing, the sculpture program, right? That's how you're gonna mention the change. The main verb with ing, and then you can say whatever you want, right? Depending on this on the change. And that's it. That's your introduction. It should be no more than 10 seconds. Believe me, that's more than enough. The student in the conversation is against the idea of eliminating the sculpture program. That should be around 7 seconds tops. Okay, guys? So do you have any questions so far about the introduction?
Why we have to use the ing form?
Okay, great question. The thing is, after every preposition, like of, about, from, well, to is also a preposition, but not after the word to, you usually need to use a gerund. So you cannot say it's against the idea of eliminating the sculpture program. That would be grammatically incorrect. So after the word of, after the preposition of, if you're gonna use a verb, then you need to use ing.
Thank
Good question, though. Any other question? Okay. So that's your introduction. And then you just have to explain the reasons, right? So make sure that you follow the template because it contains everything that you guys need to have. So you do need to use some transitions. Like, for example, first of all, in addition, you have to use reporting verbs like explains, believes, mentions, claims, argues, states, thinks, supports. Those are reporting verbs that you have to use. Because remember that these are not your ideas, right? So you couldn't say, for example, first of all, it isn't really that students are not interested, but they don't have time to take these classes. It is totally wrong if you say that, because you're saying it like if it was your idea, right? You're saying it like if it were you that you are like complaining about this change. But you're not complaining about the change, right? This is not your opinion. These are not your ideas. These are the students' ideas. So you have to make sure that you use that reported speech, right? So first of all, the student, she explains that it isn't that students are not interested, but they don't have time, right? So make sure that you use those reporting verbs. And you just explain, right? My recommendation is you can have 1 or 2 sentences, but try not to go over than that. Usually it's pretty easy to summarize the ideas here. I'll give you some tips on how to summarize the ideas later, but try not to go over 2 sentences. Okay? The same thing applies for both. And then after you explain the first reason, you go on the second one. And you say, in addition, the student believes that if the professor is retiring and that is the problem, then the university could hire a part-time teacher instead, right? Instead of hiring a full-time one. So you just explain the second reason. And that's it. That's all you guys need. You should be able to use your 60 seconds, but if you guys have extra time and you have finished everything you needed to say, you can go with a short conclusion, right? And you can say, these are the 2 main reasons why the student is not in favor of this idea, or why the student doesn't think that the university should eliminate this culture program, right? If you have extra time, but remember the conclusions are not important, they don't matter, they won't like affect your score at all. So no problem if you don't have a conclusion, okay? So that's it. What do you guys think? Do you have any questions? about this?
Andrea, can you explain again the first reasons? How we can join the two um, reason, I think. Oh,
Okay, you don't have to join the two reasons. You actually have to keep them very separated. You explain the first reason in the first sentence, and in the second one, you explain the second reason. So you just explain them, right? Like, I can give you an example if you guys want, but basically you talk about the first reason here, right? The one about the student's interest and the requirements and the art major requirements and so forth. And here in the second part, you have to talk about the professor being retiring and so forth. So you cannot mix the two of them. You have to separate them with the transition so that they are not mixed. And you have to use the reporting verbs to say or to explain each one, right? So that you are clarifying that this is not your idea, but the student's idea, right? And these words here, since and for, they are all synonyms of because, right? You don't necessarily have to use these words if you don't want to or you don't need to. No problem if you use because or if you use something else, or if you don't have to use because, that's fine as well. The important thing is that you explain the reasons clearly, right? I just added them there so that you know what synonyms to use instead of overusing the word because. But you can use any other type of structure if you want. Okay? Is that okay? Any other question? Okay, guys. So I'm gonna give you guys a sample response so that you see mainly how I manage my time and how I speak, and also you can see the content in the template being applied. So let's see. Where is the 1 minute timer? Okay, there we go. So the student in the conversation is against the idea of eliminating the sculpture program. First of all, she explains that it isn't really that students are not interested in taking these classes or they don't want to take them, but instead they do not have the time to do so, since the requirements take up all of the students' time. Our majors have a lot of requirements, and if they change the requirements, perhaps the students can take a better variety of classes and take the courses that they are actually interested in, maybe sculpture courses. In addition, she believes that if money is the problem and the fact that the professor is retiring is also a problem, what the university could do, she suggests, is hiring a part-time professor, or perhaps asking another professor that has a secondary field from the university to teach this class. That way they would be saving this money. Right? So that was kind of it. As you can see, the time that you have, I would say, is more than enough to explain every point, every relevant point, right? You don't have to really talk about every single detail that was mentioned, but the idea should be clear, right? And one thing that I want to say now that we're here, and I don't know if you guys noticed, but one tip I can give you is try to always, I know that I am not telling you to summarize the reasons from the text, right? I didn't tell you to talk about those reasons at all. So what I am saying is maybe if you can try to implicitly refer to those reasons. Remember that you have them on your mind, right? You know that what the university said. So for example, the way that I did that was here. Here I talk about the university's reasons, and then I kind of contrast them with the students' reasons. So I say, for example, first of all, she explains that it is not true that students are not interested in the sculpture program, right? So when I said it is not true that students are not interested in the sculpture program, what I did was kind of implicitly refer to the reason that was brought up by the university in the text, right? And then I am contrasting it and I say, actually, students want to take these courses. However, they don't have time to do that since most of the requirements take up all of their time. Plus, they are not able to, or as a result, they are not able to take the courses they are actually interested in, right? So what I am doing is I am contrasting the two reasons implicitly, right? I am not directly saying, first of all, the university says that students are not interested in these courses. However, the student says, I'm not doing that, right? What I'm doing is implicitly trying to contrast the ideas, right? And that way I'm showing that I understood everything. Same thing in the second. I can say, in addition, she believes that given that the only professor is retiring, what the university could do is hire a part-time professor, right? So I am kind of implicitly mentioning the university's reason of the professor being retiring, right? So that is one extra tip I can give you. And try to do that. Try to always make sure that everything is connected, that everything makes sense. Because that's part of the rubric as well, remember. So what do you guys think now? Is that clear? Do you guys have questions now that we've had that sample response tool? No questions? Everything clear? Okay, guys, good. So, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do another sample, and this time you guys are gonna try. So, okay. Okay, guys, so we will be working on this other example. Remember that you have 45 seconds to read the text, right? So here you will have the timer, and it will be counting down your 45 seconds. Please begin reading the text now. Okay. So now we will listen to the conversation. Please take notes too. I'm sorry, I think I have the wrong one. Yeah, we're gonna have to do another one, please. Okay, guys, let's work on this one, please. I'm sorry, I didn't have the audio file for the previous one. So I'll give you guys 45 seconds to read this text.
Now listen to two students discussing the article.
So what do you think of the university's new plan?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think it's going to work.
No?
I mean, I can't imagine top students being too thrilled about some of the conditions on this campus.
What do you mean?
Like the science laboratories having such old, outdated equipment, and the library needing more books, and the student center being so small. I think that the $2 million could be spent in better places if the university is really serious about achieving its goal.
Okay, but what about the other reason for building the stadium? I mean, right now we have so little contact with the town.
Yeah, but this won't help relations. Look, people from town hardly ever come to games because our teams always lose, and they're not suddenly going to improve overnight. Besides, adding seats won't make a difference. I mean, if people from town didn't come before, they won't come now just because the place is bigger.
Okay, guys. Now the question here is the same, right? The woman expresses her opinion about the university's plan, state her opinion, and explain the reasons she gives for holding that. And what we're gonna do is I'm gonna give you guys 30 seconds to prepare your responses. And if somebody wants to go, then you guys can go ahead. And if not, we'll do it together. Okay, but let's have our 30 seconds to prepare. Okay, guys. So is there anyone who wants to try? Does anyone want to try? Yeah, then let's just talk about what we had. So in the reading, they're talking about the change, which is, what is a change?
Build a new stadium.
Exactly. The university wants to build a new stadium. And what are the two reasons in the reading?
Will help the university achieve its goal and attracting more students and allow strengthen the relationship with the town.
Exactly. Those are the two reasons. Perfect. One is attracting more students, the goal of the university. And second, strengthening the relationship with the town. Perfect. And now in the listening, what was this? First of all, it was a woman, right? The question said. So was she in favor or against the idea?
Against that idea.
Exactly. And what are the two reasons that she gives?
They could spend the money on better places.
Exactly. They can spend the money on better places. If they really want to attract more students, then they should be working on other places. And the other reason?
That the relationships don't improve, and there is a difference if the place is bigger.
The relationship won't improve and there won't be a difference if the place is bigger or not. Perfect. So with that being said, does anyone want to put together all that information now and try?
I can try.
Yeah. Great, guys. Please go ahead.
Okay, the student in the conversations is against the idea of building a new stadium and spend $2 million in this. First of all, she explains that if this new building will help achieve these goals, The money can be used for other important things, like library needs more books, and it can be more interesting for different students. And in addition, she believes that if the university wants to allow strengthen the relationship with the towns, it couldn't be important because the relationships won't improve, and it can be a difference if the place is bigger or not. So in conclusion, these are the two reasons that she explained.
Okay, fancy. Well done. That was pretty good. Congrats. It was a great first try. I don't think I have any comments. Like you made some grammar mistakes, that way we can discuss later. The number one thing to focus on grammar here is the tenses, right? We have to remember that these are changes for the future. So we have to imagine the situation and talk about the future or the conditional tenses, right? What would or what will happen if the university goes through with this plan? But overall, you did really well, Fancy. Thank you. Okay, guys. So, do you have any questions now before we go? Remember, tomorrow we'll practice, so don't worry about that. But any questions before we go? Okay, guys, perfect. Then please don't forget today's daily survey. It should be on your screens. Okay, guys, then thank you so much. I'll be seeing you all next class.
Thank you, Andrea. Bye.